In this adventure of Major Tom, called The Missing Ambassador, when you hear this, turn the page. With his nose twitching each time he scents mischief, Major Tom of the Space Federation roams the galaxy in his flying orange. He and his robot partner Oddball battle with monsters and pirates, and the flying orange zooms to the scene whenever there's trouble afoot. Major Tom and his robot assistant Oddball were traveling through space in their flying orange. They were off on another very important mission.
Here we are,
Shouted Oddball as the flying orange went into orbit around the planet Gluconia. Earlier, back on Earth, Base Control had had an urgent call from the Glucons. These were the friendly creatures who lived on the planet, and they needed help. Base Control had ordered Tom to go and see what was wrong. Now they were here, Tom and Oddball got out of their spaceship. A very worried little Glucon came over to meet them.
Major Tom at your service, sir.
Said Tom.
Can you tell me what's wrong?
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Our ambassador has been kidnapped.
Said the Glucon.
He's been taken to the Red Planet, and the evil Scorpion is demanding every bit of our gluconite in exchange for the safe return of our ambassador.
Gluconite was mined on the planet Gluconia. It was highly explosive and would be very dangerous in the wrong hands.
This is very serious,
thought Tom. Tom and Oddball knew that every planet in the galaxy was in danger. They had to rescue the ambassador quickly. So once again, Tom was back in the orange, with Oddball steering it towards the red planet. They had been on their way for some time when Oddball said,
I think we've got company, Major.
Switch on the televiewer,
ordered Tom. There on the screen was a strange-looking spacecraft, and it was closing in on the flying orange. Before Tom could increase speed, a porthole opened in the side of the enemy spacecraft. As Tom and Oddball watched, huge ants began flying towards the orange.
Looks like the Scorpion's army,
said Tom.
Let's get out of here, Oddball.
But it was too late. Within seconds, the orange was surrounded.
Stand by for attack,
shouted Tom.
Just a minute, Major. I've got an idea,
interrupted Oddball.
Let's hear it, Oddball. There isn't much time,
said Tom as the ants continued to surround the orange.
Well, sir, why don't we let them capture us and take us to the Scorpion? That way we'll find the enemy and the ambassador,
explained Oddball.
That's a good idea,
agreed Tom. So they allowed the ants to force them down onto the red planet. They landed on the strange lakes. And as they bobbed up and down on the water, Tom and Oddball wondered what would happen next. Unseen by Tom and Oddball, the Scorpion had been watching. He laughed as he thought about what he was going to do to the famous Major Tom. Then suddenly, everyone's thoughts were interrupted as the surface of the lake began to bubble. This was followed by a huge explosion as an enormous, ugly, green, scaly monster rose up out of the water. It twisted and turned and thrashed about until its eyes settled on the orange, bobbing about close by. It was dinner time, and the creature was hungry. The monster began to move closer and closer to the orange. Tom and Oddball had no idea what was going on, so Oddball turned off the orange's televiewer.
Oh, no!
Yelled Tom as he saw what was outside. As the monster's great jaws opened, Oddball realized what was about to happen.
Quick! Fast dive, Major!
Cried Oddball. Tom pounced on the super dive button. As the monster's teeth snapped shut, Tom and Oddball were diving at top speed deep down into the lake. They reached the bottom of the lake.
Cut engines.
Ordered Tom.
Phew! That was a narrow escape.
Said Oddball.
Don't speak too soon.
Said Tom, pointing to a strange-looking fish, making signs at them through the porthole.
He wants us to follow him.
Said Oddball. So Tom and Oddball started the engines once again and followed the little fish through the water. They came to the surface in a large underground cave.
Up viewing tower.
Shouted Tom.
Let's take a careful look round this time.
The two were amazed at what they saw. Beautiful flowers hung down from dazzling white rocks, and the floor glowed with a blue light. When the music stops, turn your cassette over. The little fish, who'd been their guide, was soon joined by others. One of them came up to the spacecraft.
I am the leader of the fish people,
He said.
Don't be afraid. We are your friends. Come out and meet everyone.
So Tom and Oddball climbed out of the orange and were made very welcome in the beautiful city of the fish people. Tom told them all about the glucons and the scorpion.
We need to rescue the ambassador quickly.
Tom ended his story.
We'll help you.
Said the chief fish.
The scorpion is no friend of ours. We can show you an underground passage which leads straight into the scorpion's den,
Said the fish.
but you will need to get past the ant guards.
Oddball was thinking.
We could do with some sort of disguise.
He said.
Just a minute. I've remembered something.
And he rushed back to the orange. Oddball came back with a huge bundle.
I knew this would come in useful one day. Try it on, Major.
What is it?
Asked Tom.
It's a giant anteater costume, and there's room for both of us. It's just what we need to get past the scorpion's ant guards,
said Oddball. The fish people took Tom and Oddball down the underground passage.
Good luck,
they whispered before they went back to their own city. The anteater trotted quietly towards the guards. Then one of them suddenly saw it coming.
Help! Run for your lives! It's that dreaded giant anteater! Or we'll be eaten alive!
Screamed the ant guards as they rushed away in all directions. Soon the way was clear for Tom and Oddball to walk straight into the scorpion's den.
I told you it would work,
whispered Oddball from the back end of the costume. Everywhere was very quiet. Tom and Oddball crept behind some rocks and climbed out of the costume. Then they took a good look round.
Look, over there,
hissed Oddball.
It's the ambassador.
You're right,
said Tom as he spotted the old glucon tied up to a huge pole. Tom took a deep breath and looked all around for signs of danger. Then he crept out from his hiding place and tiptoed over to the ambassador, who looked very frightened. So far, so good. Tom began to untie the rope round the ambassador.
Don't be afraid,
he whispered.
I'm Major Tom, and I'm here to rescue you. But we haven't much time. We scared the guards away, but they'll soon realize it was a trick.
The ambassador tried to smile, but Tom had hardly finished speaking when they heard the sound of terrible, spine-chilling laughter. The ant guards had been led back by their leader, the Scorpion. As the guards flew round Tom, the Scorpion stood laughing. Tom turned to face his enemy as the terrible creature said,
My plan worked. I knew you would come here in the end.
Then he snapped at his guards.
Tie him up.
Now both the ambassador and Tom were tied to the pole. The guards flew round them, pleased to have captured the one who had tricked them with that anteater costume. All this time, Oddball had been watching from behind the rocks. He needed another good idea. He alone would have to rescue the ambassador and Major Tom. Oddball did have an idea, and he hurried back along the secret passage to the fish people. He told them what had happened, and then rushed off to the Flying Orange. He flew back in Segment 1, the high-speed mini-ship, and with a quick wave to the fish people, he zoomed back to the Scorpion's den. By the time Oddball got there, it was dark, and the guards had gone. The Scorpion was about to send a message to Gluconia and tell them that he would get rid of both their ambassador and Major Tom if they didn't send all their gluconite at once. Oddball had stopped right over the two prisoners. Tom heard the hum of the engine as Segment 1's mechanical arm was lowered onto the pole. Tom watched as Oddball then put the ship into reverse. He revved the engines and with a mighty pull lifted the pole with its two prisoners still tied on into the air. The noise had brought the Scorpion back, but he was too late. Oddball flew them back to the safety of the fish people. The ambassador was so pleased to be free.
Now we won't have to give the gluconite to that wicked Scorpion. Thank you, Major Tom,
he said.
It was nothing,
Replied Tom.
Oddball is the real hero. Without him, who knows what the scorpion might have done to us?
That night, after they had said goodbye to the fish people, Major Tom and Oddball flew back to Gluconia with the ambassador on board. The Glucons were very happy to see him safely home, and so Tom and Oddball left the planet and set off through space once more. They knew it wouldn't be too long before Base Control sent them on another mission.